later it hasn't dated at all. So congratulations, Rashid.
Thank you. I'm amazed myself.
Well, 1988, the pinnacle of perestroika, new previously closed subjects, drugs, rock music, new characters such as rock musicians and drug dealers and people. Everything is new. What it was that was driving you? Was it these new subjects, new characters? What was behind your sort of main idea, your main impetus for making this? Can you remember it now?
Well, I would like to add that there was a third thing considered non-existent in the Soviet Union, sex.
Yep.
Well, it's the only thing that is missing in the film.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Well, drugs and rock and roll are there.
Yeah, of course.
Well, what was driving us? First of all, something that we wanted to see in theaters in the Soviet Union, and we couldn't find it. And so we were waiting for it for years, and finally we decided to make it ourselves, so we made the movie.
Yeah, that's probably the best explanation. It's like our friend Boris Grabinchikov once said that he was listening to all this music around him. Where is this music in Russian? Well, it's nowhere. Let's make it ourselves.
They left us no choice.
Yeah, left us no choice. Well, Needle came out just a few years after Sergei Solovyov's Assa, the film that was shown just a week ago in the framework of this very festival in this very theater. And you were a student of Sergei Solovyov.
Yes.
At the FKIK, the Old Union Institute of Cinematography. And the two main characters, or the main actors and characters from the film, Viktor Tsoi and Alexander Bashirov, they were there in Solovyov's Assa. To which extent were you influenced by your master's work?
Well, considering Viktor Tsoi and Alexander Bashirov, you had to ask to what extent my master was influenced by myself. because it's me who brought those people to Solovyov, to our workshop. And my first stage performance was done with Alexander Bashirov.
Mm-hmm.
We entered Moscow Film School at the same year. The parallel classes, parallel workshops, and I discovered that he could be a great actor, and I used him. And after that, I used him many times. That's when Solovyov fell in love with him, and then I brought Viktor Tsoi to Solovyov and to his attention, and I suggested him to pay closer attention, and he started working on Assa. At the time, the film was called
Здравствуй, мальчик банана.
Здравствуй, мальчик банана. Yeah. He loved him, and I also made my first film at Moscow Film School called Yaha in '86 with Viktor Tsoi.
Yes.
And long ago, before Assa started. So when he saw him there, and he loved him too.
Oh, okay, well, that's great news and very, very important addition. I know that you had a number of projects, you had planned a number of projects with Viktor Tsoi, starting from a sequel to The Needle, and to this extraordinary project, Citadel of Death, that you planned with the godfather of cyberpunk, William Gibson, where William Gibson was a scriptwriter and David Byrne was supposed to be the co-composer with Viktor Tsoi. Could you tell us a bit more about this project, because they're very little known? These ideas, of course, they weren't realized.
Yeah. When I started traveling to the United States, I met a lot of people there, filmmakers, who were very interested in what we were doing with Victor. Not only film directors, actors, or whoever, but producers too. And Ed Pressman, maybe some of you know him, I don't know, he's a very well-known independent producer in the United States, who made, for example, films like Das Boot and The Crow. He was very interested to make a movie with us, and he called Bill Gibson, this famous cyberpunk writer, to work with us. And I met him in San Francisco, and we started talking about my treatment that I wrote about the futuristic Leningrad, which becomes the only independent city in entire Soviet Union. Then that was Soviet Union, but still wasn't just Russia, but the entire Soviet Union that was under civil war. And he loved the idea, and we started working.
Victor was still alive.
Yes, of course, because that was our project that we were supposed to do together with him. And we were at Sundance Film Festival. We presented The Needle and presented the previous film, Yaha, to this, Hollywood crowd.
So that would have been, Sundance is in January, so that would have been January 1990.
90.
The year that Victor died.
Right.
Just barely,
Yes,
a
that's
few
right.
months before.
Right. And we were approached also by Tony Stafford, who then became vice president of New Line Cinema, and also the News Corporation, the big Japanese company, who wanted to do it with us. And
So it,
That
would have,
would
it
work,
certainly would have happened.
absolutely, if not for Victor's death,
Mhm.
sudden accident.
What a shame. Well, of course, there were lots of other ideas, as I understand, and pretty much the only thing that you could do with Victor post-mortem was the Needle remix, Igla remix. That's a very unique project. Could you tell us a bit how you approached that? What was that about?
Well, it was very simple. The 20th anniversary of Victor's death was approaching, and the many fans of Victor's and even filmmakers would approach me and tell me that you should think of releasing The Needle again, because there's an entire new generation that didn't see the film. And many of them, they were born after Victor's death, so it would be a good idea. I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I started talking with Russian distributors, and they said, well, interesting idea, but we cannot release the film as it was 20 years ago. If you would propose something new, I would do it. I said, yeah, sure, because we have a lot of materials left, because the first cut of The Needle was over 2 hours long, so a lot of scenes that we just threw away, yeah. So, yeah, sure, of course, I will put back everything that we've thrown, and it will be a new version, like extended version of The Needle. And I went to Kazakhstan and found out that everything was destroyed. So I returned to Moscow and said, well, unfortunately we cannot do anything. I said, too bad, because we could release the film. And I started thinking about it, and I remembered that there's something in music called remixes, right? So this, I don't know how to call it, a genre or whatever, kind of music that started in Jamaica in the beginning of the 60s, when the new rock and roll started to be very popular among the new generation. And the poor people in Jamaica, the DJs in Jamaica, would put this music and play on the dance floors to the younger people. And they were forced to stop doing it because you had to pay. And so they decided, what if we use those LPs and put our voices over, put the bass lines, drums, and everything else, and there will be music. And so then these remixes were born. And I thought, if it's possible in music, why not doing it in film? I take my original material and I shoot the new scenes with the same actors, and I have the right to do it because I myself is the director. And we did it because Peter Mamonov is still alive, and Alexander Bashirov is alive, and so on. And we shot new scenes and added them to the old material. I put together the Kino group of Victor Tsoris. 3 of them were still alive, and they remixed their old music. They also put some new material there, and so we did it.
What was that? Yeah. I want to get back to 1988 and 1999, rather, when the film came out. It was extraordinarily successful. Victor Tsoi, who had previously appeared maybe in a couple of short films, was chosen as the best actor of the year.
Yes.
And the film was extraordinarily successful. Can you remember what was your sort of impression? How unexpected was that? And to which extent do you think it was? Of course, Tsoi and the Kino were hugely popular. How do you rate this kind of combination? I understand it's a difficult question. It's kind of very difficult to separate the personality of the actor and the star from the film itself, but how do you assess it now, looking back at 30 years ago?
Yeah, in fact, it's nothing difficult. It's very simple for us. We knew from the very beginning that we were making something important, something good. What we were not sure of is if this film would ever see the light of day, because it was still, when we started filming it, it was still 87. There's some sense of new times coming in the air and so on, but in fact, the real perestroika started only a year later in 88, and then of course in 89 and so on. And we thought, well, if most likely this film won't be allowed to be distributed in the Soviet Union, so why should we think of it? So let's do something that we want ourselves, that we like ourselves. If there's no chance to show it to the public, so why? Trying to please someone in Goskino in Moscow. So and we did it. And all of a sudden, when I sent the film, the final cut of the film to Moscow, it was like in June of 88, like 30 years ago, these days. We were waiting for something, for the decision. And a couple of months later, there's only one note came from Moscow. Just, can you take out this dedication to the Soviet television? Well,
This is fine if it.
someone that takes drugs and everything, but this is something, well, I was surprised, and I came to Kazakh Film Studio. I said, please send them back my question, what they have against the Soviet television. Well, of course they never answered. And then again, 1 month later, or maybe 2, a news came from Moscow that they gave the film the first category. That means the best that you can expect of their decision, meaning that thousands of copies distributed from Baltic republics to far east of the Soviet Union in every theater, and that was surprising. Yeah, but a little bit later, I found out why it happened, and we understood. All of a sudden, with all this politics of glasnost, of openness, like in 1 month or 2 months, all the newspapers in the Soviet Union started to criticize everybody. Doesn't matter. Gorbachev himself, whatever. No authorities, like no censorship, and so. And the situation became absolutely the opposite of what was the day before. Usually in the Soviet Union, it was very, very dangerous for people in power to allow something. If you allow something to happen, then you're risking your position. But the next day, when this open glasnost happened, it became very, very dangerous to forbid something. Well, and you could lose your position. and there's one person at this commission who would decide on films to allow them or not to be released. It was the older brother of Victor Tsoi's Razlogov, Kirill Razlogov, who happened to be also my professor at Moscow Film School, history of cinema. And we had a very, very good relationship with him. And he was actually the one who decided. And everyone else said, okay, fine. We don't have anything against it. And that's how it happened. And then the next day, there was a huge, huge box office in the Soviet Union. And what is the most surprising thing to me and to Victor and everyone else, and we cannot imagine the situation these days, the film kept showing, kept screening in theaters in the Soviet Union for 1 year.
Not months.
Not 1 month,
Yeah.
2, 3 months, 1 year.
Yes, that's absolutely extraordinary. Of course, we all remember that. Well, before I give the floor to the audience, who I'm sure will have lots of questions, I will have one more question, final question from me, which is probably inevitable. There's so much discussion now, so much controversy, so much talk about this new film, about Victor and Kirill Serebrennikov's Lето, which was premiered at Cannes a month ago and just went on general release in Russia a couple of weeks or a week ago. I wonder whether you have seen the film and what do you make of it?
Yeah, I saw it. I remembered all those negative reviews before the film came out, including Trapilla or Grebenshikov, people who were working with Mike and Victor, and who were actually part of the film itself, and they were depicted by actors, and they were very negative towards the film. So I went to the screening with some reservation, but open-hearted. And I'm glad that film turned out to be a very poetic, light, romantic film. With, of course, it's a parallel reality. It's not our life, and it's not Victor, and it's not Mike on the screen. But it doesn't matter, because a film and art in general, it doesn't have to copy life. Its value is not coming from its similarity with real life or whatever. It's everyone who makes this, has something in common with arts understands that. The artists, they don't have to follow life and copy it. And the film dictates its own rules, and it plays by its own rules. And if it succeeds in this, all that, the film is fine, it's good. If not, it's just imitation and just game with no meaning. And Serebrennikov, he succeeded. So, and I'm glad that he did it the right way.
Oh, good. And I believe that your opinion here is very, very important. You knew Victor very well. You worked with him. So
And I work with Mike too.
you worked with Mike too, right? So it is very, very important. All right. Well, I'm sure that the questions from the audience. Please.
As it has been mentioned, you studied at the prestigious Geek University in the 80s. As a film student myself, I'm really wondering what was it like? What was the atmosphere like at the school at that time, at that particular period?
Well, the Geek was famous for being a very difficult place to enter. We had two most difficult universities to become a student of. It's Geek, and the other one is the Institute of International Affairs in Gimon. Well, and myself, I made a couple of films before entering Geek, but I never thought of myself as a real filmmaker and changed my profession. I'm an architect. And so I just decided to spend the summer in Moscow and to spend some with some challenges, you know. I wanted to challenge myself and change direction of my life. And I decided, okay, I should try to enter the two most difficult universities that I know nothing about. Well, and I thought, okay, international affairs, fine. You can be a diplomat, you can go to different countries. You cannot go there just as an ordinary man, you know, it just have to be someone important, and then we'll allow you to go. Okay, and I will be able to see, I don't know, Led Zeppelin. But the problem is you have to have a good list of, of being a good Komsomol leader. And I lost my, membership card and so on. And I didn't pay for years. And I said, well, no way, and no. And I almost was thrown out of the Architectural Institute. That's not a good record. Okay. The other one, well, who cares? It's I wrote some, poems, short stories. I had a lot of drawings and stuff. Oh, well, maybe they will consider me as someone creative. No. And if I will not succeed in entering the film school, at least there will be a lot of young, attractive girls trying to squeeze in this film school. And even if I will get one or two girlfriends, it will be fine. It will be later well spent. But the reality is different, right? So I didn't have any girlfriend, but I entered the film school unexpectedly. And I found myself, what should I do now at this place, strange place? A legendary place, of course. Everyone knew about it. And we saw so many actors and stars on screen, and I am among them. Probably I will be a star one day. But in 2 or 3 weeks, I suddenly understood that this is the real art, this hard work. And we were lucky enough to have Sergei Solovyev as our professor, was very tough with us. And every week you should come up with a new performance, stage, play, something, working with your friends, non-professional actors and so on. And on the other hand, the legendary theater director Anatoly Vasilyev, взрослая дочь молодого человека, so and so on, and was legendary, a revolutionary director. And he was teaching us how to play, how to act. It's acting class. And that was the first and last time when Vasilyev had a class at GEEK. And 3 years later, we all were accomplished filmmakers. So it's thanks to this hard work. And so I understood that you cannot become a film director. You cannot just learn how to do it. You have to be a film director. You have to discover film director in yourself. Like Buddha said, you cannot become Buddha. You can only be Buddha. And the same we can apply to filmmaking. So we discovered how to do it.
No questions? Yeah, there's a question.
Good evening, Clem Cecil from Pushkin House. Thank you very much for this screening, and it was an incredible privilege to see this film. I haven't seen it before, so thank you for this film. And I'm going to ask you a question which you've probably been asked many times, so I apologise in advance. But can you tell us something about working with Tsoi, especially as he wasn't an experienced actor at this time, and something about your how he responded to direction and how much of himself he brought to the part?
Well, the fact is that we weren't working with Victor. We were living together and doing what we pleased. It wasn't work, it was life. For example, I love Beatles. I love England in part thanks to Beatles, right? And I cannot imagine that I would ask Lennon or McCartney, like, how did you work with each other? They didn't work. They were doing something that pleased them, and they knew that from the very beginning that they were doing something great, much bigger than each of them, separately. And we got this feeling with Victor when we became close friends. Before I shot the first film, with him, and of course, second one, we were very close. And we shared, our views on life, music, art, everything. It was like happy coincidence that we found each other. And we complemented each other because, of course, we're different people, right? But we breathe in the same air, and well, we always believed in what